One of the top questions on eBay when you're selling, whether you're new or have been selling for a little while, is deciding between selling as a buy it now or selling as an auction. I've been selling on eBay for a little over 10 years. I'm no expert, but I have a good insight into this. Let's dig into the pros and cons of each. So I got a few items I was going to use as an example, but I've already packed them up for the day, so I'm just going to put them on the screen as we talk about them. So there's a lot to consider. The first and most important thing to consider is your selling model, your business model, and where you're finding items and all of that. If you've followed me, I buy a lot of my stuff from storage lockers. So I'm buying large bulk items, and by the time it makes it to eBay, I often don't have a whole lot of money, if anything, into them. So my model tends to be a little bit different than those who are either buying from garage sales, yard sales, thrift stores, where you have a very fixed amount of money into a particular item already, and you need to control your margins. That's going to weigh very heavily. So when you're in the business of what you might call turning and burning, where you don't have a whole lot of money and you want to liquidate and move inventory, an auction can be a really good model. The biggest downside there is you have a risk. With auctions, you're leaving up to the market to determine the price of what that's going to sell for. For example, these three items I'm going to pull up as we talk. Two of them are Hot Wheels cars. Actually, I'll pull a few. Another is a camera, and another is a jacket. For example, they all have approximate values. I know what they might sell for if I were to put them as buy it now, but I also don't know how long that'll take. I decided there's enough interest in them to take the gamble, put them up, and sell them because I had fairly confident that they would sell in that 7 days on auction. The downside risk is they sell for that minimum bid. So if your minimum bid's $1, you got to be willing to take that unless you put a reserve price on it. And I'll talk through each of those. So the upside downside of buy it now is you can control everything. So you put a buy it now price on it. It's up to you if you want to take offers, saying that you'll let people offer less than your asking price. And ultimately you have that control whether somebody buys it for full price in the same day or you have to wait a year to do it. So there's some good and bad there. Waiting a year obviously does not work for everybody. If you have a large space to store inventory and you're okay with that, that's fine. If you want to talk about the sell-through rate and all of that, like I mentioned, that's a whole separate topic, and we can dig into how you can estimate that. But again, it's always going to be an estimate at best. So one of the first criteria that I look for when I'm determining if I'm going to auction something or sell it as a buy it now is demand. So when you're searching for an item on eBay, you look for a similar one to what you have that you're planning to list, and you look at how many are listed. The most important part is to then look at how many have sold. That will determine, maybe there's a bunch listed and nobody's buying them, there won't be much in the sold. If there's a fairly good balance of in the 90 days sold category paired with how many are listed, that should tell you that there's enough demand that may justify an auction. If it meets that demand and there's plenty of sold and not just one or two over that 90-day period, then I'll go ahead and make the decision oftentimes to go with an auction. Now, when you price it, that's completely up to you. Some people will do $1 auctions that may incentivize more attention, that may incentivize more bidders. It depends on the item. At times I'll do that. Other times I'll set the price for anywhere from 20 to 30% of what I expect to get for it, so that even in a worst case scenario that only one person bids, I'm hedging my bet and I'm still making some money off of it. On the flip side, when an item may not have that much sell-through, or it's an item I really am willing to hold on to make sure I get top dollar for it for whatever reason, that's when I set a buy it now. I'll set a buy it now, and again, because of my model, I'll often put a best offer as an option, and again, you can exercise that best offer to your own discretion. You don't have to accept an offer just because you receive one. One big disclaimer I want to put on the auction versus buy it now is a little bit of risk. There's a risk inherent no matter what selling on eBay. There's always going to be bad actors. There's always going to be some people who are up to no good. But I believe it's a little bit heavier, and this is anecdotal for auctions. So when we're talking about risk with auctions is you don't particularly have as much control over who buys. When you have a buy it now and somebody lowballs you, but maybe you're willing to entertain it, you can vet their track record or their feedback score or something like that prior to deciding. On an auction, you don't have that. The auction is open to whoever is going to bid on it. That meets your bidding criteria, obviously. So oftentimes what you'll see, and this is a risk and this is not a hit on new eBay buyers, you'll see somebody with a feedback score of 0, and sometimes those individuals are short-term accounts that are done to either bid and never pay or scam. It's not very common, but it happens more, I believe, in auctions than buy it now. Over time, you'll learn mitigating techniques and how to minimize that risk, both on the buy it now side and on the auction side. But that's just the cost of doing business, is sometimes it happens, and learning how to control it as best as possible is up to you. So really, the downside there would be it potentially you could get scammed, but you have that risk either way. And then the other side is you have somebody that doesn't pay. It's really not the end of the world, because then you can just revisit that. It's only been up for a week. You either relist it, block that buyer so they're not repeating it, and hope it doesn't happen again, or you can change your decision and put it to a buy it now model instead. So those are just my thoughts on that. There's a lot of nuance, but that's really the core of how I determine those two, and reflecting on what works for you. There's some business models where an auction just never going to be a practical thing, and just operating as a buy it now makes a lot more sense. To break down these few quick examples, that way you can get a little bit of a case study. So I'll pop them on the screen here. I had two red line Hot Wheels cars. These are from the 60s. Very collectible. When you do a search for them, there's a lot of demand, and actually there's a lot of examples of people putting them at auction. Condition is a big thing with those, so with so much variation, it can be advantageous or disadvantageous to put them as an auction. So I put them both up, started the auctions around $20. One of them I honestly expected to only get $20 to $30 for. The other one looked like anywhere from $20 to $60. So you'll see here one sold for $38 or so, and one sold for $22. So they both kind of met expectations. I was happy. There's a lot of demand, 20-something watchers over that week period on one of them, which is just really, really great attention. Who knows, they may have taken the similar amount of time, a week or so, to sell if I had done a buy it now. I don't really care to find out. I decided to go with the auction. Another example here is this parka that I put up. So I found this in a storage locker. When I looked up the brand, the thing that stuck out to me was not that there was a lot of demand for it per se, and this is kind of an anomaly against my recommendation, but this is also how I hedge my bet. So this was brand new, was $950 or so. Retails for a lot of money. This was used, so I really had almost no metrics of how much this would sell for used. Again, I want to turn and burn, so I decided to do an auction. And instead of doing an auction very low, I started relatively high just to feel out if there's an interest. So I started the bid at $350, really had no expectation if this would sell or not, and got one bid. So I got one bid at my minimum amount, $350. I sold it within that week of having it. That's very quick turnaround for me, and I'm very happy with $350. I hope the customer is even more happy that they just got a jacket for a third of the retail price in great condition. So the last example we're going to use here is this camera. And this one I think is a super example because it exceeded expectations. So I looked up this Canon SureShot camera. The examples ranged anywhere from maybe $20 up to $90 or so when I was looking them up. And biggest thing here again is condition, if it works. So tested it, it works, and started the auction, I believe same thing, at $20, knowing at the low end that's how much a broken one would go for. I'd at least get attention. Lots of watchers, lots of bids on that. It was bid up to over $90 and sold and paid immediately. Obviously, knock on wood, it doesn't get returned for any reason, or an item not described claim, which is common, but pretty awesome example of it exceeding expectations, and sometime an auction actually being a very good opportunity.